or English and Spanish because I'm bilingual.
Yeah.
So, but I
Yeah.
tend to clutter a lot more in Spanish, I've noticed.
Okay.
So I think I don't know why that is, but for some reason and I just tend to clutter a lot more in Spanish, probably because I feel like my vocab is a lot more limited in Spanish. So I feel like I'm thinking more about the words, and I end up, just cluttering. So I noticed, like, ever since I was like probably in, I don't know, I would say probably when I was younger. I don't remember the exact grade, but I remember when I was younger, people will tell me I talk too fast, to slow down. That that I was mumbling. The kid didn't comprehend what I was saying. And eventually, at first I didn't really pay much attention to it, but as I got older, mostly like later years of high school, probably the last few years of high school, I really started to pay attention to it. And the first few years after high school, I started realizing that it's really affecting me and it's really affecting me and communicating and getting my point across. And it's very difficult for me to talk. And especially when I started interviewing for jobs, I noticed that it really affected me because I'd go to an interview and I'd start like talking super fast, or I'd be like making my words like that. And uh, yeah, I don't know, it just that's when I started affecting me. Ever since
Okay.
I was a little kid is when I people would tell me, but I didn't know what it was back then. I thought it was just me talking too fast. I mean, think people would think I was I was a stutterer. They'd saying like, "Oh, you're stuttering, you're doing this," but I never really paid attention to it, and like I never really um paid much attention to it until, like I said, until I got older, and then I started researching stuttering, and then I actually didn't hear about the word cluttering until like a year or two after I graduated high school, and but then I didn't pay attention to it I didn't pay attention to it for a few years after that. So until like I would say like a year ago, I started researching cluttering more, and that's when I found the cluttering Facebook group, and that's when I joined. Started reading all the posts in there, and taking advice from some of the therapists in there. Well, I started. Well, I don't know. I didn't think about. I started researching it first, and then I started looking at videos of people who clutter, and it's like, oh wow, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
Because I always thought I was a stutterer, or I was just mumbling, or I had bad speaking habits. And when I first learned about the word cluttering, it's like, oh, that's really cool that there's a term for this, and that there's other people who have it. I'm not just the only person who does this. Yeah, a little bit of a relief because it felt like there were a lot more people like me. Like I said, it wasn't like the only person out there who does this, and it also kind of helps me knowing that there's treatment options out there for this. That there's like therapy you can do, and there's like things you could practice at home to help you a little bit. But yeah, it did make me feel a lot more comfortable knowing that there was like a scientific term for it, and that it wasn't just me. The difference between stuttering and cluttering, at least in my, I'm not a professional or anything. I'm not like really, but in my like impression, I think cluttering tends to be more like um fast talking, jumbled speech, whereas cluttering tends to be more like interruptions in your speech, like you can't you can't really, like, you pause after every other syllable, and cluttering is more just like you could say it all at once, but it just comes out, as a jumbled mess. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't really know how to describe it. It's just something that happens to me when I talk. I feel like it's mostly in my head, but sometimes when I'm in a in a conversation that I'm like really like nervous about, I'll feel it in my body as well. Like if it's like a really tense, tense conversation, or like an important meeting, then I'll tend to feel it a lot more in my body. But I mean, it's mostly in my head, I think,
Yeah.
especially when I'm just having a casual conversation. One of my cousins recommended to my mom, like, I go to a therapist, and then she asked like the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh no, this kid's fine. He doesn't need speech therapy. fix himself. So
Oh,
it might have been the doctor's fault. I never got speech therapy as a kid. I don't know. I just
okay.
never really, really never paid much attention to it. I thought it was just something that would like fix itself eventually,
Yeah.
uh, or or whatever. But then, like I said, after high school is when I started really paying attention to it. Then I kind of stopped paying attention to it for a little bit, and then once I got more into the professional world, that's when it started to really put more attention to it, and that's when it started to really affect me. I started doing that. Started monitoring my speech a little bit. Kind of auditory feedback. Kind of recording myself talking, listening back, and kind of just monitoring my speech overall. And help me out a little bit, but I still tend to clutter when I'm not paying attention. A little bit, but sometimes sometimes it doesn't help. Sometimes you'll try to, but it makes it worse. I don't know. Like when you think about it too hard, you'll start to you kind of overreact, and you start, I don't know, you start cluttering a little bit more when you overthink it, when you overthink things. What I normally try to do is I'll like take a breath for a second, and I'll start kind of just really talking really slow. And sometimes if I do this like really slowly, it'll kind of help me adapt for the conversation. And although for me right now I sound really really slow, I'll record myself and it actually doesn't sound that slow. So yeah, you kind of have to get used to talking like a tortoise. I don't know. I think it's just not. I don't know. Sometimes you just you're not paying attention to it because you're just in the moment. You're not thinking about your speech. Like I mean, I'll notice when I start cluttering. I'll notice when I start cluttering now because it's very obvious to me now. Uh, but sometimes I try to control it and it doesn't really help much. So I don't know. I think it's just something that's beyond our control sometimes, especially as clutters. People tell me I speak too fast. People tell me I speak too. They're like, slow down. People tell me I don't understand what you're saying. Please, please slow down. People think I'm like super nervous. People think I'm super excited, or they give me all these like they tell me all these things. They're like, you need to slow down. Um, it just revolves around things like that. Necessarily lazy. I think people think like I might have like some sort of like I don't know, just like like a mental disorder. Like I like like I'm not like I'm like not mental disorder, but like I'm like dumb, so I don't know how to express myself.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like I end up, so people think like I'm dumb because I'm not very good at expressing myself verbally. So
yeah,
I think that's the impression I get from most people. Like I've noticed I talk to people sometimes and they think I don't know if that's what's going through their head, but it feels like they're thinking like, oh, this guy's kind of dumb. Yeah, I used to think I used to worry a lot more. Now I don't really. I mean, it's mostly for my I worry more about myself because it's more about me wanting to get my point across than me, what others think about me. But I mean,
yeah,
I mean, me thinking people, it does affect me a little bit. But like I said, I try not to let it affect me as much. I try to like, I'll try to let myself know I have no control over. I have little to no control over it. So don't get too down on it. At work, when I'm talking to someone, when I'm in a meeting, when I'm it's very embarrassing sometimes when you're trying to be professional, or you're in a professional meeting and you start cluttering, you start talking fast, you start cluttering. It's just it makes you appear as you're not as trustworthy as, I don't know, people kind of feel like you're nervous and they don't trust you as much. And I don't know, that's the impression I feel like I get people when I'm cluttering, that
yeah,
I'm nervous, that I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't think, I mean, no one's really asked me. It's just sometimes people tell me I speak too fast, but I don't really mention it, that I clutter. Um, but I mean, I think I've mentioned once or twice that I am a clutterer to some people, but I don't think I think I'm at a point where I can control it a little bit better than when I was younger. So sometimes it just comes out like at random moments mostly, but I mean, I do tend to clutter pretty often.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's certain times where I can control it for a little bit. It used to affect me a lot more. I tended to, it tended to like affect me a lot more. I used to think about it like a lot more. Like I used to really, almost like a depression from it, just because like I felt like I wasn't really improving with it, and it was really I wouldn't say it was like extremely affecting me, but I mean it did make me a little bit frustrated at times because like people wouldn't because I couldn't get my point across sometimes, and but I tended to be a little more nowadays. I'm tending to be. It doesn't really affect me as much, even though I do clutter. I just tend to I don't know how to say that. Just like tend to not let it affect me as much because like I mean it's something I can't control. So if I constantly stay like droning over it, it's gonna really affect me. So it's better just not to like you know let it get you down. Therapy, but I try to check with my insurance. Apparently, our insurance doesn't cover for adults, only for younger
Doesn't
children. It's
kids cover it?
expensive to get speech therapy, so I'll have to you know see what options are available. I mean,
Y-
I might have to take a session eventually just to do it, but I mean, I would prefer if my insurance would help me out. I think the general population just thinks talking too fast or I'm nervous or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think the general population mostly thinks I'm just talking too fast. Is my
Yeah.
impression. One time I had a job interview and it was just really for some reason I just couldn't stop cluttering. Like the whole time I was cluttering, and like the whole time the interview panel was looking at me and they were like, "What the heck is going on with this guy?" And I was just like every word I was saying was just like super fast, or I was like, "Ugh, I can't do up." I'm just trying to, and I think it gave a really bad first impression. But yeah, I think that's probably like the worst my cluttering was ever been is during that like interview because I was like really nervous. When it's a little more strict conversation or whatever or important conversation, I'll try to I'll try to really focus on enunciating my words. So I don't know. I think it's when I'm like for some reason when I'm talking to myself, like I'll record myself talking,
Mhm.
and for some reason like I'll like if I'm really like paying attention, like I won't clutter that much. Like if I'm like listening to myself talking on like a and I'm recording myself on the phone just to monitor my speech, it's like for some reason it'll be the best speech I have. Out loud, I don't tend to clutter that much, so I'll be able to to read pretty clearly. Sometimes I'll kind of get stuck a little bit, but for the most part, I think I can read pretty clearly. I mean, everyone knows about stuttering, but like but no one really knows about cluttering, which is kind of different. A lot of people I told people I'm a clutterer before, and they're like, what the heck is that? And like I'm like, well, it's kind of like stuttering, but it's a little bit different. It's more about you know having your being a little more of a not having as clear of a voice, and they're like, oh, that's just like a I don't know. They kind of like didn't believe that was like a real term. They
Yeah,
thought I was just kind
exactly.
of like making an excuse for my like bad speech habits. Try to really think about what you're gonna say before you say it. Try to really like try to really enunciate every single syllable you say, like over enunciate. Don't just like because if you enunciate how you think you're enunciating it, you're gonna clutter. You're gonna sound not as clear. You have to really like over enunciate every single vowel. Like if you're in an important conversation, you just really want to just like, put emphasis on each every syllable, and that helps a lot.